Hello everybody and welcome to another video tutorial. Now for this week's video tutorial you guys voted and you guys chose for me to actually work on the Executioner character for the Alice in Wonderland horror series. So once again I'm trying to tie in this character to previous images. So I'm going to include some of the same textures and materials that I've used and brushes to make sure that they all tie in together. Now, as I'm working on this image, I actually have Adobe Bridge open in a separate window so that I can actually browse through the previous images more easily. You don't necessarily have to use Adobe Bridge for that. You can easily use the preview modes. I find that Adobe Bridge doesn't tend to lag as much if in comparison to preview mode if you have multiple images in there. So it's a little bit faster for me to select and deselect images that I want to preview, which is why I tend to use it. Now, I went through a couple different renditions for this image, but most of those renditions were modifications of the initial sketch that I had made. So at this stage, I tested out drawing spikes on the character's shoulders, and obviously I was looking at different reference material as I was doing this. But he looked too much like a warrior and not enough like an executioner. So I went to some more traditional image references, and you will see me later on actually remove the spikes entirely and actually paint over in his shoulders and head area a cover essentially that's joined and that's much more simplified in the final rendition. The reason for that obviously was that it was looking too much like a warrior character and not enough like an executioner whose job it is to essentially cut off your head. So at this stage I've gone to a more simplified design. I want to show the eyes very simply lit. This character is not a good character. He does terrible things to people every day, and that needs to show in his demeanor. So I was experimenting a lot with the armor plating that he had originally on his legs, but I decided to actually remove that and add more of the square checkered material look that's in the more traditional interpretations of an executioner. So I'm playing around with a bit of the pose as well. I wasn't very happy with the pose. The pose was a bit too rigid. I wanted to show a bit more form and a bit more fluidity and movement. So I moved back one of the legs and also shrank down and increased the size of the foremost leg so that there's essentially a transition between the perspective. So at this stage I'm still working on the boots. I'm testing out whether or not I want to include certain parts. For the axe, I already have an idea of what I'm going to do. In the background buildings, once again, they're in the background, so you won't see them too much, so I'm not too worried about their silhouettes. I've just changed the material on his hips, so it's more of that checkered look, and it leads more to what a traditional executioner would have worn back in the day. Now obviously I'm going to add more of the skeletal look and skeletal aspects to this character as I go, but for the general sketch it's really important that I plan out some of those basic aspects before I actually fully paint out the character. So I'm working on the chest area. He's very muscular. He needs to have a lot of strength in order to actually be able to do his job. So I wanted to show that strength in his upper torso, very much so. But once again, I needed to add almost a ribcage look texture to his chest area. So although he has a lot of muscles, you will see later on in this painting that I actually add some more of a rib cage look to him. Just working out just how light I'm going to add highlights into certain key areas. And I'm choosing these areas very carefully because I don't want to waste too much time detailing everything out, because you can waste a lot of time for nothing. And generally the human eye will just fill in the gaps essentially. You just have to give it enough information so that it can extrapolate the rest of it. And that's what I'm doing. For the pants, I'm just doing some really basic lines to help insinuate what's actually going on in the actual material. And it gives way to more form. Adding some of the pattern elements onto his headdress essentially. And I started adding that ribcage aspect and feel to this character starting with the head garment and moving my way downwards. I'm starting to incorporate that more and more within the character, trying to make sure that the anatomy still shows appropriately and it's still very imposing. This character is supposed to be not your best friend, unless you're the queen that's obviously having a steady supply of people being executed. Working on the boots a bit, highlighting key areas once again, really working on the structure of that arm to make sure it's appropriate. Getting the folds for the arm can sometimes be difficult, so I do look at reference material to figure out how the muscles would overlap. Even though I've drawn it 100 times over, it's always good to still look at my reference material, just because you do tend to make mistakes and you keep on building up on those mistakes. So if you keep on looking at your reference material, you'll help avoid that. Working on the axe right now. I know that I want to have a very unique design for this axe. I don't want it to be a normal design. There's the bone tip that's essentially included in the design of the axe, and I really want to showcase that. Buildings, I'm just highlighting key areas and sampling the colors as I go so that they still blend in with the background a bit. So I'm just working on the colors right now. So all I did for the colors is I added a color layer to the overall character, added a color burn layer as well as a linear dodge additional layer, so that I can add some highlights, and I keep on turning on and off the color to check to make sure I have enough contrast between the different elements that are already in the piece. Just working on the background and just making sure that certain key areas, once again, have enough definition, because you do run the risk as you add highlights to lose a lot of that definition that's key to your painting. And this image is almost completed. So this is the final image, as you can see, and this entire image took about 4 hours to complete, so it wasn't too long of a process. It was actually a pretty quick painting. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you guys soon, so thank you and take care.